across to Westminster. We're hearing a lot from all the different party leaders in the last day or so before the election. UKIP leader Paul Nuttall is speaking now.
It's getting worse. And it is an establishment that was content to whip up cries of racism against those of us who warned that we were on a disastrous course and called for a much tougher approach to both security and integration. On Sunday, the Prime Minister finally took a step towards acknowledging the problem. For far too long, politicians in this country have lacked the courage to name the source of terror within our midst. I will do so again today. It is Islamist extremism. When I cited this fact during the debate in Cambridge last week, I was roundly criticised by the leaders of the Labour Party, the Liberal Democrats, the Greens, the SNP and Plaid. The fact that these leaders are not prepared to acknowledge the source of the problem means they cannot even begin to start solving it. I want to make it clear. Islamist extremism is a cancer within our society, and it is a cancer that needs to be cut out. We must be prepared to reverse the cuts to the police budget. This has led to 20,000 fewer police officers on our streets. We told you before these atrocities had taken place that these cuts were wrong. In these times of heightened terror, we need more bobbies on the beat and an increase in community policing. We must also be prepared to reverse the cuts to the prison service, and that is why UKIP is prepared to recruit 7,000 more prison officers in an effort to curtail the rampant radicalisation in our prisons. We must also properly control our own borders. Therefore, we are committed to recruiting 4,000 more border guards. And I want to make it clear here today that any British citizen who goes abroad to support or fight for Islamic State should have their passport revoked, their citizenship removed and never be allowed back into this country. I also call on all parties to commit to a major increase in the resources for MI5 to help it in its brilliant work in infiltrating, disrupting and detecting Islamist terror plots. We must also open a debate in this country as to whether we routinely arm our police force, particularly in major cities. At the very least, we must double the number of armed police officers as soon as possible. Some have said that some of my proposals have been extreme. However, I make no apologies for taking nothing off the table to ensure that our people are kept safe, whether this includes tagging or indeed in the future detention orders. And we must demand more from the Muslim community itself when it comes to reporting extremism. Here, the Labour Party is culpable, with people like Andy Burnham pushing the idea that the prevent strategy should be scrapped because it is uncomfortable for some people within the Muslim community. It is clear that there has been a breakdown of trust between Muslim leaders and the prevent strategy. Indeed, reports have suggested that only 1 in 8 referrals to prevent come from within the Muslim community itself. This is simply not good enough. It is in no way unreasonable to expect any British citizen or resident to report concerns that another may be on the path towards committing horrific violence. In fact, I would suggest it is the bare minimum that we should demand from any decent person in our country. UKIP, therefore, believes that prevent should not be dropped. In fact, it should be redoubled. 6 weeks ago, at the beginning of this general election campaign, UKIP launched its integration agenda. At the centre of this agenda was a determination that every young person from every community should have the chance to enjoy the full fruits of British society and make their maximum contribution to it. That, we believe, is the way forward. Many of our suggestions, including banning face coverings, banning Sharia councils, mandatory checks for girls at risk of FGM, and longer sentences for grooming gangs, were widely derided by the Westminster establishment. Let me give you a few examples. Caroline Lucas of the Green Party accused our integration agenda of being full-throttled Islamophobia. The Lib Dem, Lynn Featherstone, said that our policies to stamp out FGM were outrageous, and we were even accused of going to war with the entire Muslim religion. I utterly refute that our integration agenda is in any way Islamophobic or divisive. It is about bringing communities together and ensuring that community cohesion is improved. And I predict that history will prove that UKIP was ahead of its time in highlighting these issues. Finally, it is clear that we need to do more to prevent impressionable young minds from being influenced from extremist ideas. The authorities must now get a grip on Saudi funding of radical imams and mosques. It is now time to close down mosques where extreme Wahhabi or Salafist versions of Islam are preached. We know that the government has conducted research in this area, and we therefore call on the Home Office to release its findings. Moreover, I repeat my call, which I have made for many years now, for the banning of all Saudi and all Qatari funding of mosques in Britain. For all of the criticisms I have of Mrs May, who I believe has been complacent at best during her time as Home Secretary regarding these issues, they pale into complete insignificance in comparison to the prospect of Jeremy Corbyn or a Diane Abbott government. It would be reckless, in my opinion, to have, as Prime Minister, in these dangerous times, someone who has opposed every single piece of anti-terrorism legislation put forward, someone who has gone out of his way to befriend terror groups in both Northern Ireland and the Middle East, someone who has opposed allowing the police to shoot to kill when confronted with armed terrorists. I want to make it clear, if there is a UKIP candidate, go out and vote UKIP to ensure that these policies are enacted. However, I have no hesitation in saying that out of more of the 200 constituencies where UKIP has stood aside in this election, there are only a handful where I would recommend a Labour vote. Kate Hoey, Kelvin Hopkins and Frank Field are three that come to mind. But in the vast majority of other seats, Labour candidates cannot be trusted on Brexit and cannot be trusted on national security either. The same is true of the Liberal Democrats everywhere. So where UKIP is not on the ballot, I hope that those who voted for us in 2015 will bear that in mind as they make their choice on Thursday. Whatever the result, I will be proud of UKIP's campaign. We have set the agenda, as before, on Brexit and immigration. But we have also marked out new priorities for our country. And we've been the one party with the guts to tell it how it is on integration and security too. I have never had any doubt that we would be vindicated on these issues. And in fact, I'm only sorry that this vindication has come too soon and has involved so much blood being shed. If the terrible events of the spring and early summer 2017 mark a genuine turning point in political attitudes, the moment when moral relativism and political correctness are ushered off the stage and a new, muscular, no-nonsense approach takes their place, then we will have a better chance of preventing another Manchester or indeed another London Bridge in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, in any event, under my leadership, UKIP will continue to be a patriotic party that speaks up for our wonderful country and sounds the alarm whenever the interests of its people are jeopardised. I thank you very much indeed. Questions? Yes.
You said we need to have a discussion about arming all police. What's your personal view on this? Should all UK police be armed?
Well, I noticed that there was a poll on your station last night which said that 72% of British people would like to see the majority of the police being armed. I certainly would like to see more armed police, particularly in cities, guarding places of interest, guarding places where obviously of tourist interest as well. I think we're now living in different times. I work in Brussels. I work in Strasbourg as well. You see armed police everywhere, particularly in Brussels at this present moment in time. I think we've just got to realise that we are living in a different world now, and we're living in a society where a small group of people hate the way we live, hate who we are, and quite frankly, want to kill us.
So is that a yes?
I would like to see more armed police, particularly in our cities, yes.
Can I just ask you one other follow-up? You've put forward a lot of big plans, reversing cuts to police, reversing cuts to prison, reversing cuts to borders. How would UKIP fund that, particularly with Brexit and claims that that would dent the UK economy?
We've made £35 billion worth of savings in our manifesto. We would fund these things by, one, cutting the foreign aid budget, two, there will be a dividend from membership fee when we leave the European Union. We will cut HS2, and we'd also look at the Barnett formula, which ensures that in Scotland they're getting £1,700 per head more than we are here in England. So everything is fully costed.
Do you know how much those reverses would cost?
£2.1 billion. Yes.
Hi. Questions there from Sky correspondent Siobhan Robbins asking about the routine